Hello and welcome to this edition of Consciousness Raising Online. We are on our newest platform, uh, thanks to the genius of one Desti. And so actually we are now broadcasting through YouTube, which will allow our reach to be even greater as we perfect this process. Let me see. Hello. Hi, Desti. Hi, Clyde. Thank you. And Miss Rhea, good to see you. And I haven't seen River check in yet, but I figure she's probably there. Um, what I'm going to do today with our new platform is, to some degree, some of the information some of our longtime members are familiar with, but I promise you this, stick with me today and you'll see how that information you might already have can be enhanced by what we covered today. This particular session is raising your conscious level. Your consciousness level. And I'm doing that because there are a lot of people say, well, you know, what's this consciousness raising stuff? But I'm a firm believer that the more control, understanding and control that we have of our minds will allow us to move forward collectively and individually towards the day when we really will be able to not only be free, but have power. Because freedom is really a privilege in this society. It's the power that we need. And if you don't believe me, just check out how white America deals with us. They didn't necessarily have a problem with us calling ourselves black. But when you put black and power together, oh, they went ballistic, you know. So we're going to cover some information initially that, like I say, some may be a little bit familiar with, but hopefully it will allow your mind to expand even more. The thing about consciousness is that consciousness, oh, did I want to turn off the drums? Okay. Consciousness, we need to understand clearly what that is. Because a lot of times consciousness, we sort of take it for granted that we know what it is. Okay? But let me say it like this. Consciousness is self-awareness. Self-awareness. Right now, we are being basically conscious. We're dealing with our conscious level. But what does that mean, really? Well, let's take a look at it like this. The outside world we see through our eyes, and the images and information passes through our eyes to our brain, and then it's configured in our brain in a way that we can comprehend some of what we're seeing. Not all of it, but we comprehend some of it. So for an example, here we see, if you look at it, you see a dog, a man, trees, you see outside. But what actually what our consciousness focused on was the dog. Now that might be because what? Because we sense a possible danger with the dog, and so that's what becomes the major focus of our consciousness. Okay, even though all those other elements are around or that we saw, but we focused on that dog. And consciousness works like that. Now, when we look at out at the world, it's a conglomerate of stuff. Okay? But here's what I want you to do. I want you to think about your consciousness, your conscious level, the self-awareness level. I want you to imagine that it is let's say 10 blocks long, 10 stories tall, and yeah, that's pretty big. 10 stories tall, 10 blocks long, and 10 blocks wide. Okay? That's pretty big, ain't it? And and the reason why I want you to imagine it that way is that your conscious mind will expand to fit that definition. As we're talking, your conscious mind is saying, "Oh, okay, I'm 10 blocks long, and I'm 10 blocks wide, and I'm 10 stories tall." It does that for you. And so your consciousness, just in this process, your consciousness was raised. Okay? And as you look at this graphic right here, and you think, wow, that's my conscious mind. Is all that's, that tall building, right? Because it's about a block long, but now remember we're saying 10 blocks long, 10 stories high, and 10 blocks wide. So it's pretty big, right? Yeah. That's the conscious level. That's the conscious level. So keep that in mind for a few seconds here. All right? Okay. Now, the subconscious part of our minds. I want you to really get this, because this is very important for our mind to understand. The subconscious is a lot bigger than the conscious mind. In fact, the subconscious mind is at least 30,000 times more powerful than our conscious mind. Say it again. Our subconscious mind is 30,000 times more powerful than our conscious mind. So now remember, the conscious mind is 10 blocks long and 10 blocks wide and 10 blocks tall, or whatever, 10 stories tall. But now your subconscious is 30,000 times. Now imagine that. As you look at this graphic, remember how we were looking at the buildings and when it was 10 blocks long, the conscious mind, this is your subconscious. Look how huge, how big your subconscious is. Wow. Wow. I'll let that sink in for a second while I have a sip of water. And your subconscious right now is getting this information. Now, it's a couple of things as we go along in further defining our subconscious mind. We want to grasp the fact that our subconscious mind has various components. Okay? It has various components. So, one of the components of our subconscious mind is the memory. See, part of our subconscious mind has a memory section. And I want you to imagine that the memory section of our subconscious is 100 blocks long and 100 blocks wide and 100 stories tall. Okay? Yeah, the memory alone is huge. Now understand, our subconscious mind is where almost all of our long-term memory is. There's very little long-term memory in our conscious mind. It's in our subconscious. So as you think about it, remember your subconscious, it absorbs everything. So every face you've ever seen, every person you've ever met is right there in our subconscious. That's why I have that graphic there, because there are literally thousands and thousands and thousands of faces in our subconscious. Okay? There's everything, every sound you've ever heard, every word you've ever read, every book, everything, every smell you've ever smelled. Okay? And it also means every TV commercial, every movie, every video, every word your daddy and mama ever said, your brothers and sisters, every teacher, all of that is in your memory. But what happens is, by us not being taught properly about our memory, we don't know how to properly access all of that information that's there. See, here's another graphic to give you an idea about your memory. You got all this stuff up there in just the one section called memory. Okay? But what happens is that since we haven't been taught, we don't know how to recall that information. It's not remembering, it's recalling it. See, it's remembered, okay? But our conscious mind can't access that information. It's not there. However, if we tell the subconscious to give us that information, to recall that information, then the subconscious will give us that. I always mention about the movie Total Recall. Okay? In the mind, the subconscious, like I say, has all that information. As you look at this graphic, think of it like this. All those buildings in there, right? Think of it as all the different files in our subconscious mind, right? In the memory section. And in those, each one of those buildings is all the different offices and all of that, right? In our subconscious mind, we've got all the files, all those offices in our mind. Isn't that amazing? Wow, that's amazing. And all we have to do is learn how to recall that information so that the subconscious mind will go into building that, like that building in the center near the top, right? That might be a building that has childhood memories, childhood memories. And so it'll go into that building and pull out the particular files we want, say of a particular time in our childhood when we went somewhere with our family and it was very pleasant. And so that file is in that building. Your subconscious will go into that building, get that file, and bring it to your conscious mind. Okay? And in doing that, it'll bring not just the pictures from that time, the sounds, and also the smells from that time. All of that can be brought forth. It can be recalled, and your conscious mind will get it. That's how powerful it is. Now, that's the memory section alone. That's the memory section. Okay? Now, the next section is the imagination. The imagination. And I want you to imagine that your imagination section is 50 blocks long, 50 blocks wide, and 50 stories tall. Okay? Now, the thing about the imagination, and you all recall we did a presentation a few weeks ago about the imagination, and it's so important because the imagination is what we use along with the logic and the memory and some other things I'll get to in a minute, to create new ideas, to solve problems. That's why the imagination is so important. That's why they spend so much time and effort and energy to kill our imaginations, to basically, to kill it. Because if you kill people's imaginations, either by taking over their imagination and deciding what we get to imagine, then we will have extreme difficulty in solving problems, in creating solutions, in creating ideas. And if they do it successfully, they will have us believing that we created ideas that they gave us. And we don't even begin to know what we could imagine. Okay? That's why that's so deep. The imagination is so fundamental to our thinking process. But they've tricked us into thinking, oh, the imagination is just for entertainment. Okay? It's just there for entertainment. Ain't that cold? The imagination is so powerful that it's difficult, and Miss Drea can attest to this, it's difficult for us, most of us, to imagine the majesty, the sheer brilliance, of the pyramids. And this is the big pyramid, Cheops. But think about it. Unless you've been there, you really can't wrap your mind around how huge the pyramids are. But now if we think about it, if we try to imagine, while we get the information, we look at pictures, we get the statistics, the size and all of that, and if our minds are tuned, we can then imagine what it's like, but it still does not even get close to what it's like when you actually see it in person. And once you see it in person, your mind will expand to absorb that, and your mind will be forever changed. It will cause you to have a whole new understanding and appreciation for our people who built this, who built all them pyramids, right? Okay. Oh, it's buffering. Okay. So it's important for us to understand how important the imagination is. Okay. Especially when it comes to the part I mentioned earlier about being able to create new ideas, to see things differently, to imagine things differently. And so we need the 50 blocks long and 50 blocks wide and 50 stories tall for the imagination. Allow your mind, your subconscious mind, to grasp that and be comfortable with that kind of huge imagination. Okay? Now the next level, the next area is the logic. So you got a part of your subconscious that is simply logic. And that includes mathematics and all the mathematics. Even the physics and algebra and all that stuff we didn't like. it's already there in our subconscious mind in the logic section. And so I want you to imagine that the logic section is 50 blocks wide and 50 blocks long and 50 stories tall. Okay? Because the logic, when you take logic and you combine it with imagination and memory, oh man, you're able to, that's where our genius is. We're able to figure out stuff. One of the things that's happening right now, all over Africa, there are young people who are doing some absolutely magnificent things in terms of technologies. Young brother, I think he's in South Africa, he created a machine that that can cleanse the blood, like what do you call them? When people do a dialysis, I guess it is. And now he doesn't even have the super, modern facilities. He did this with some tools he figured out and made. Then you got some sisters in, I don't know, another country, some sisters who figured out a way to take human urine and turn it into energy. It's amazing. And this is why it's so important for us to understand how devastating it is for us to be losing so many young people through violence here in the United States. And understand that that's not a flaw in black people. It's part of an intentional process. Because how many of these young people are we losing who could have been the young person who is going to create new ways for us to do things and new inventions and solutions to things, and we're losing them to violence. Okay, that's not accidental. We've had some young people be created to kill those that look like themselves, and because they have also been given the tools, meaning guns and bullets, they're killing other young people. Some people say, well, it's the bad ones killing the good ones. To me, it's all our young people, the good and whatever way you want to describe them. Okay? So we need to understand how important logic is and why they work so hard to kill off our logic and keep us from using our logic to fit the needs that we have. Okay? The fourth area is language and symbols, because they're interconnected. Language and symbols. Okay? And this is one that's in a way kind of mysterious to us, because we have not been properly taught. First of all, we haven't been taught properly about languages, and we definitely haven't been taught properly about symbols. I think one of the best books I ever read that allowed me to really grasp symbols is Dr. Francis Cress Welsing's book, which is actually a series of essays. And you all know what book I'm talking about. It just ran out of my mind. But when she breaks it down, the first time I ever read it, literally as I was reading it, information began to be apparent to me. Things that had lurked in my subconscious, but I couldn't quite get a finger on it. But she was able to give me the information and allow me to comprehend what was symbolic in my subconscious. Why is that important? Because symbols trigger reactions. Symbols trigger reactions. As you're looking at these graphics right now, they're operating on us. When you see certain symbols, be they positive, be they negative, they're causing a reaction in us, and they can be physiological. Some symbols can cause us to have a tingling sensation because it ignites in us a positive feeling. And then you can have other symbols that can cause fear in us, that ignite fear. For example, a burning cross, right? A noose. They can trigger negative energies, okay? So we need to understand about language and symbols. And some of y'all have heard my talk about languages and how, you know, we are definitely not talking about languages, because even though we are bilingual, most of us are bilingual in that we know some of the, quote, proper English, American English, which is a bastard language. But we also, most of us know also Black English, or, and y'all remember the brother that we, I have to dig that up and do that again. The brother was talking about how there is such a thing as Black English, and there's a logic to it. But we don't have the advantage of understanding language and how it operates on us, okay? And that's important. We have to work on that for our next generation for sure. You see, we have to, because our lives are at stake. So I've shown you certain symbols because I want them to, you know, they're igniting certain feelings inside of your subconscious. If you realize how powerful your thoughts are, you would never think a negative thought. That's a powerful thought. See, we have been taught and trained and programmed to have negative thoughts about ourselves. How terrible is that? That's what has actually happened to us. We have been programmed to think negative thoughts about ourselves. See, there's a term called self-esteem. Self-esteem. Esteem means to hold yourself in high regard, or to hold something in high regard. Esteem, okay? Self-esteem means to hold ourselves in high regard. So we should have high self-esteem. Now, when we display that, we should understand that the opposition calls us arrogant. That's what they tend to do. If you have a strong self-esteem, that's what they do. They call you arrogant, uppity sometimes. We should know it as confidence. See, when you have self-esteem, high self-esteem, you have confidence. You have confidence in your abilities. You have confidence in your right to be here. You have confidence in the genius that you are, and the knowledge of who you are. And that's built from self-esteem. That's built in. Okay? So, again, symbols, they trigger energies. They trigger energies in us. And that's why it's so important to have positive symbols around us. It's like in our home. Or it's like, a good example, I'm thinking of it now. Whenever I see somebody who has a big old cross around their neck, it doesn't necessarily say to me that they're a good Christian. Okay? What it does say is that they have a strong feeling about what they understand as Christianity. Okay? And I've done this. I've asked them, well, you know, what's the difference between that cross you have around your neck and a crucifix? So what is a crucifix? And what's a cross? Well, very simply, a crucifix is a cross with a person's body on it that some people say is Jesus on the cross. That's a crucifix for crucifixion. However, if that image that they have in their mind of that Jesus is a white Jesus, then there's an issue. They may not even be aware of it. It might even be causing, when they come across other information that conflicts with that, they experience what we now know as what? Cognitive dissonance. Because if you have been programmed to believe that Jesus was a white man, and you come across some information that says, well, if there was a Jesus, he would have had woolly hair and what, feet of burnt brass or whatever, burnished brass or whatever. Well, that conflicts with your belief. And so you will experience cognitive dissonance, which either means you reject the new information, or you'll run from it, or you'll be like a deer in headlights, stuck. You know what I'm saying? Know what I'm saying? All right. So it's like what I know Clyde deals with all the time, is trying to move people to a clearer knowledge of what is supposed to be Christianity. You know, I had and I got to share this now, I'll move on, but it's so funny. I had it wasn't really a discussion, because you can't discuss certain things with some people. And I very seldom discuss religions with people. But I forget how it came up, but I actually had a person tell me that, you know, this person professes to be a strong Christian, and said, well, when, you know, Jesus was the, you know, when he was a Christian, when he became a Christian, that's when he became righteous. And I said, well, you know, I'm kind of confused here, because how could Jesus become a Christian? I'll let that sink in as we move on. All right. The next level for us is what I call the super consciousness. Sometimes it's called the unconscious. See, we have the subconscious, and then we have the unconscious. The unconscious, or what I call the super consciousness, is that which we cannot fathom. We can only feel it, but we can't see it. We can't touch it, but it's there. And I want you to imagine that the super consciousness, in terms of just to get you know, use your imagination. I want you to imagine that your unconscious, or your super consciousness, is 1,000 blocks long, 1,000 blocks wide, and 1,000 stories tall. And so that's so big I can't even put that in a picture. See, I believe that your super consciousness is your connection to the universe. It's our connection to the universe. It's our soul. Our soul. See, we can't imagine our soul. We just know it's there, right? We know it's there. And so we can feel it, and it does pass certain information to our subconsciousness, but we can't see it. So when I say it's 1,000 blocks long and 1,000 blocks wide and 1,000 stories tall, I'm talking about something that's so huge that it almost can't be imagined. I'll let you think about it for a second while I have a sip of agua, or it's water. Okay. You see, that's how powerful our minds are. That's how powerful our minds are. Clyde, hey, James from Philly. You know what, Clyde? Clyde is saying that sounds like the term love is part of the superconsciousness. I would have to agree. Real, true love. I'm not talking about this stuff that they be trotting out here, which is a combination of lust and greed and coveting. I don't know, real love, yeah, I think it would be something that we can not even begin to wrap our minds around. Now, one of the things that we definitely should understand is that we have various forces working on our subconscious. And let me back it up by saying this. You know, we are told that we only use at best 10% of our minds. This is what they tell us. They say, oh, even the smartest people only use 10% of their minds. And why that's so dangerous such a dangerous lie is this. What it says is that that if that's true, then that would mean 90% of your mind is not being used, or at least not by you. So if we are only using 10%, what's going on with that other 90% of our mind? You follow me? Now, if we understand how certain things work in the society we live in, then we could grasp this. We are programmed through media. One of the most dangerous medias is what we call the television, and nowadays the internet, which actually sends information directly to our subconscious. And this is important to understand. Our subconscious does not know the difference between what is real and what is not. It just simply absorbs information that comes to it from our ears, our eyes, our nose, our skin, okay? It absorbs the information unfiltered. And because we're not taught how to properly tell the subconscious what to do with that information, or even how to identify what that information is, then our subconscious just has all that information in it, a lot of it unfiltered or programmed by whoever sent it. So for an example, we have literally millions of people who can't help but be entranced by Disneyland. Okay, this happened not too long ago. There's a show called Blackish, TV show called Blackish, and I like Blackish, but they did an episode the other day. They did this episode, at least I just saw it the other day, where the Blackish family went to Disneyland. And See, you have to understand, first of all, Blackish is on ABC. It's on the ABC network, and the ABC network is owned by Disney. Okay? So, a lot of their shows, especially the sitcoms, they have their, at some point in time, they have their shows go visit Disneyland. It's a way of continuing to sell the idea. When I see grown people, and I saw this with Whoopi Goldberg, who calls herself a Disney kid because she's done so many movies through Disney. She loves Disney. And these people talk about Goofy and Mickey Mouse and Minnie Mouse as being real people, characters, things. If I'm not mistaken, if you go to Disneyland, you see Mickey and them, but they don't talk, do they? Because they're really people in costumes, but I don't think they talk. But here's the cold part. Why do they treat, these are adults, why do they treat these characters as if they're real? It's because when they had it first put into their minds, it was put into their minds without a proper designation. In other words, remember I said the subconscious mind doesn't know that a mouse talking isn't real. A mouse or a dog, personification. Personification means to attribute human characteristics to things like animals, rocks, whatever. And so most of us have a programming in our brains already, in our subconscious, that Disneyland is real and that it's the most wonderful place in the world. Some of us grew up watching, it was a TV show, ran forever, called The Wonderful World of Disney or some stuff. And so it put certain energies in our minds and transmitted to our bodies to love the idea of Disneyland. Now, for the longest, I've had a thing that I will not go to Disneyland. I didn't take none of my children, none of my surrogate children, none of my children. I would refuse to go. Because, first of all, I know that Disney hated black people. But it's the idea that is in our brains, it's in our subconscious, to love Mickey Mouse. And when you see children, how they react to Mickey and Goofy and Minnie Mouse and stuff, understand that they do see them as real, and it's not a contradiction because they've never been given proper instructions to their subconscious to understand that these are characters. So part of what we have to do is retrain our minds to understand what we're seeing, what we're experiencing. And some of y'all have heard me talk about this before, but I still say it. I talk to the TV. You have to talk back to the TV. You have to talk back to videos you see. You have to talk back to anything, especially anything that's video-ish, anything that's moving images. Because moving images can have, and many do, subliminal instructions attached. And they go straight into your subconscious, and you don't even know it. You don't know it on a conscious level. Okay? And so, for an example, if I see a commercial that's really ridiculous, I will say, that is a commercial, it is not true, and in fact, is rather ridiculous. I say it out loud, I'm giving my subconscious mind an instruction on how to file that particular information so that I will not be walking around thinking, oh yeah, that's true. And if you don't believe me, look at how in the United States of America, that you have people, thousands and thousands and thousands, and in some cases millions of people who still believe such things as, oh yeah, he's a Muslim and he was born in Kenya. And they believe it in spite of all the evidence that shows it's not true. And that dude, 45, can still stand up today, as he did the other day, and spew lies out of his mouth, and they buy it. They cheer it. They cheer it like mindless imbeciles, but it's because they have gotten certain instructions in their minds that cause them to believe certain things. I ask you to think about this. How? Yep. Esther, you got it. Think about this. How does a television work? How does a television work? It works by, how the best to put it? It works by transmitting waves. It transmits waves. Okay? And waves, we should understand what a wave is. We can't see it, but it exists, right? There's radio waves, there's TV waves, there's waves. And that's simply forms of energy. Now, the thing about a television, and videos work similar on the internet, is that, but especially TV, when you watch TV, a couple of things happen. When you watch TV, your left side of your brain, which is where the logic side is, the logic side shuts down. It shuts down. The right side, which is where your emotions tend to be, that becomes more active. And it opens up so that the information coming from that TV goes straight to your subconscious, and what's the word I want to do? It radiates energy to your emotions. That's why we can watch TV and something sad will come on and we'll find ourselves crying. That's why they use music and different things to cause emotional feelings, even though if our logic was working, our logic would say, this ain't true, this is some bull. But because the way it operates, it shuts down your logic. And so your emotions are opened up to any and all kind of bull crap. And it can actually have us feeling for somebody who's killing black people, which your logic should say, hold it, what's going on here? But your logic is shut down. See, remember that when you watch TV and when you watch videos, that these media operate on us and they issue instructions to our subconscious. Okay? Sex. Oh, geez. You know, the internet exists in such a strong way because it was a way for people, particularly males and particularly white men, that they could enjoy sexual things of a sexual nature in a very private way. See, when I was growing up, they had stuff called, what they call them, blue movies, little 8mm movies and stuff. And it was so weird because you had pornography, but it wasn't, let's put it this way. Pornography when I was growing up is so different from what is available today to children, much less adults. Children, if they have a phone, if they have a computer or whatever, if they can get to the internet, they can get all kinds of sexual information, positive as well as negative. And it's out there by the ton. Now, it doesn't make our children any more knowledgeable. It just makes them more aware. And so what has happened is that we have now in our second generation of children who are becoming sexually aware at very early ages. And it's sexual. It's not about love. It's not about not even about liking people. It's just a hookup is what they call it, right? They call sex a hookup. And all different kinds of sexual activities they engage in, and we'll say, but that's not sex. And you know, it's really kind of sad because they're missing out on what we would have called the romance. And romance is just simply the Europeans' word for what African people have always known. It's affection, it's lovingness, it's treating each other with lovingness. You know, Europeans call it courting and sparking and dating and all those things. All those things are socializations that allow us to get to know each other. And all of that's been getting killed off. And in the process, it's also done a lot to normalize certain things about people that were at one time a very minor part of the population. And it's crazy. In a way, I really feel bad for children nowadays because the information that they're getting and have privy to is confusing to us adults. Ain't no telling what it's doing to children, right? So we need to understand how that affects us. I have a term. There's two terms that I use to deal with how to investigate things. One is, I say, follow the money. If you want to know what's behind stuff or what's causing something, or what are the true motivations of people, follow the money. If you follow the money, I guarantee you 99.9% of the time you will get to the bottom of whatever's going on. Follow the money. The other one, and this is what I'll close with, is this. One of the best things we can do for our minds, and that means our subconscious mind as well as our super minds, is learning to ask the right questions. See, if we ask our subconscious mind the right questions, our subconscious will give us the correct answers. Sometimes things have multiple answers. And so we have to give our subconscious the right questions in order to give us the correct answers. When we learn how to do that, and it's by inch by inch by inch, we will be surprised at how brilliant we are. And that might sound like conceit, but it's not conceited. We are brilliant people. We're so brilliant that other folks have gone to extraordinary lengths to convince us that we're not. Think about that. They've gone to extraordinary lengths to convince us that we're not brilliant, that we're not geniuses. Man, man, oh man, oh man. All right, I close out with, and I hope that you understand that your mind has actually grown. Your consciousness has grown just by being here. You don't even have to try to remember. See, you don't have to try to remember it. It's already, everything that we covered today is in your subconscious. Now, if you tell your subconscious, say, listen, I want to recall the information I received today when it's needed. If you say that to yourself out loud, it will work for you. If you say, I want the information that I received today I want to recall it when it's needed. That's a powerful, it's even better than an acclamation and what do they call them, affirmations and stuff. No, just give your subconscious the instruction. Yeah, it works. Let me say no justice, no peace, no love. KNOW. Okay. You all enjoy the week. And thank you, Destiny, for doing what you do, which has allowed us to, as we head towards our 20th anniversary, to have a new level of communicating information and knowledge to the world. And there's going to come a time when all of this will make even more sense.